There's a question here, and it's a question that runs through much of the gospel. It's a question of authority. You remember the scene of the mother with her two sons saying, Jesus, grant it to have my son sit at your right hand and your left in the kingdom. There's a question of authority. There's a centurion who says to Jesus, I too am a man of authority. I command. People obey. And so at a word from you, my son will be healed. There's a question of authority. Jesus commands the man lowered through a roof on a cot, on a bed, to get up and walk. By what authority? It's a question of authority. Who alone has the authority to forgive sins? Other than God himself. It's a question of authority. It's writ large across all of the scriptures. It's writ large across the Gospels. Jesus, in the very way he lives his life, conducts his affairs among the men of Judea, Galilee, the Middle East of the time, Israel of the day, commands authority, demands authority. His life is one that you can't help but see as a challenge to all of the authorities of the powers and principalities, as well as the kingdom of men and the way we operate our affairs. Jesus is one who demands authority, but not as the way the world does. Authority is a big deal in our world, right? Who can look at the global scene and the global stage that we are currently witnessing and say that there is no battle for authority? There is a battle for authority taking place across the Western world right now, typified in the political establishment of the United States. On the left-hand side of the political spectrum in the United States, the Democrats are screaming tyranny. There is a tyrant who seeks all authority for himself. He's a tyrant and a bully. On the right side of the political aisle, they're saying that the left has had so much power and authority for so long that they have set up an entire regime to keep and continue to empower that authority, to enrich themselves and maintain that authority of a very few select political elites. And so the right side of that political spectrum are trying to tear down those structures that have bolstered and funded the authority of the Democrats. So whether you look to the left or whether you look to the right, there is a battle for authority. Who has the authority? But we don't need to look terribly far to see the reality of power struggles, battles for authority. We can look to our own families. We can look to our local governments, our national governments here in tiny little Aotearoa, New Zealand. Battles for authority. We can look to our businesses. Battles for authority. We can look to our churches. Battles for authority. Power struggles. People who have power have a tendency to wield it in a particular way. My way or the highway. Do as I say, not as I do. They impose their will upon the masses. And when there is a threat to that authority, there is fear and anxiety. Toys are thrown from the proverbial cot. Dummies are spat. Upheaval is created. Hand grenades are launched. Fellowships are destroyed as people leave because of the fear of loss of power and authority. It's a big deal. I was told, entering into the ministry by someone high up in a national ministry, that the first battle that you will face in ministry is a battle for authority. As the people who currently have it will try and make sure you don't. Isn't that sad? He said the second battle that you face is a battle for authority. As the first lot clear out and everybody applauds, well, thank goodness they've gone. And then the second lot go, well, that was great that you did that and you got rid of them. But then they seek to impose their will upon you. So the second battle that you face is for one of authority. Isn't that sad? The things we will do to keep authority. The things we will do for fear of losing authority, losing power. The fear that's engendered in us when we feel like we are powerless, when we don't have authority, when we don't have influence, when we don't have sway. The fear that rises up in us when we once had power and authority and then it's taken away. See, there's something about each of us that loves to have power and authority. And when it's taken away, when it goes, we become anxious. Because the truth is that too many of us, and by too many of us, I mean all of us, find our identity in the power and authority and the influence that we wield. Whether that's explicit, up front leading stuff, or it's implicit at the back, murmuring and doing stuff to control things from behind the scenes and pulling the strings. We've all seen it. We've all experienced it. We all know it. We've all tasted it. But that's not the authority that Jesus has. That's not the way that Jesus handles authority. That's not the way that Jesus handles influence or power. That's not the way of Jesus. It's our way, the way of the flesh, the way of sinful human beings, without question. But it's not Jesus' way.